Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Cochran with my co-host Kevin MacDonald on your hometown station 98.1 FM and 1220 KHTS. And our guest now is Adam Laraway from Focus Physical Therapy. And what's the topic, sir?
Hi there. How are you?
I'm doing well, except I have to come in and see you again.
We'll get you fixed up.
Yeah, oh yes, you fixed me before, but now it's coming back.
There we go. There we go. Thought we would talk a little bit. It's called heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is, if you break down the science of it, we look at an EKG of your heart and we look at what's called the RR interval. So when you look at an EKG, there's lots of like up and down movements and stuff like that. When you get to the peak, that's called the R wave. And so when we look at that, the distance between your first heartbeat and your second heartbeat and the third heartbeat, it's called the RR interval. And for somebody's body who is in a good, healthy state, there should be a variability with that. For somebody who's under a lot of stress, it should be very consistent. It will be, so say you had 60 beats per minute and you see it's 1 second, 1 second. That's an indication that your system is actually in a state of stress. If you have 60 beats per minute and you see 0.1, 0.8, 0.12, stuff like that, you see a variability, that's actually a sign that our nervous system is actually really healthy and running how it should be. And we have equipment at Focus that I've had for 5 or 6 years, but we just got an updated version of it that detects that. So we actually run an EKG of your heart, and we do 300 beats, and then it spits out a whole bunch of data and tells me kind of what your nervous system is doing. And that's really, really important because us to determine, like, why are you not healing? Why are you coming in with pain or whatever your complaint is? And so it can give us some insight into what's going on with your nervous system and how do we then use our treatment techniques to fix that.
That's so interesting because therapy to me means body movement. You know, I don't think of what you're talking about as physical therapy.
Well, that's how we kind of differentiate ourselves, because we're kind of on the cutting edge of physical therapy, and we're trying to implement, technology to give us better insight. So just giving you exercise ABC, we're actually trying to figure out what's going on with the whole system so that we can heal you and get you back to doing what you want to do.
Yeah, Barbara, I think both you and I are the traditional physical therapy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think just share with us. I mean, you're beyond what Barbara and I think of a physical therapist.
Right. Yeah. And, you talk to people that have gone to physical therapy and sometimes it helps great, and sometimes it doesn't. And so, well, in those instances, why does it help them? We give you exercises, we teach you mechanics, we teach you different things, and why doesn't it heal? And so using some of the technology that we use at Focus, we can then give us more insight to what's going on. And it gives us a lot of information. So it gives us, the HRV gives us kind of the balance of, we've talked about in the past, your parasympathetic and sympathetic balance. So we can see like, oh, well, this person has no parasympathetic activity. So they're not getting into that state of recovery that they need to be because they're in that sympathetic state, that stress, that fight or flight state.
And you're not going to recover in that state.
Exactly, yeah, because
you're
your
not going to
body's
heal.
not getting that recovery. Yeah. Exactly. There's actually some cool stuff there too. It will give you your biological age, which is your adjusted age. So let me back up here. It gives you your actual age. So, you were born, I was born in 1975, so I'm 50 years old. But then it also gives you a biological age based on what your health. So even though I'm actually 50 years old, because I take care of myself and I do a lot of this stuff on myself, my age adjusted age is 37. My body is functioning like I'm actually 37, which hopefully that's going to correlate to, as I get older and older and older, that I'm staying healthy and active and able to do what I want to do.
Well, wow. Thinking of that, I've come back and see you again.
Yes.
Because I've been waking up in the middle of the night and my feet are just killing me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to get out of the bed and start walking around.
Just to kind of wake them up and get them moving.
Yeah, and wait for that. It's not exactly pain. I don't know what
discomfort, you know,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, because
discomfort. It doesn't feel good.
the nerves aren't giving your normal conductivity, not your normal sensation. So
No,
they're
and when I
telling you.
came the first time to see you, I mean, it completely disappeared.
Yep, absolutely.
So I've got to come back again.
Yep, and unfortunately, it's either, you know, it either didn't completely heal when we finish, you know, or it could just be, you know, the inflammation has kind of come back, and so we need to get back into the system and tap into it and get you going.
The neuropathy.
For the
That's
neuropathy,
a result
yes.
of chemotherapy.
Yeah,
That's one
yep.
of the side effects.
It is, absolutely, and it's a really big problem, not just in chemotherapy, but a lot of things, different, you know, with diabetes and you know, a lot of different disorders can cause those type of symptoms. So it's a big issue, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of good treatments for it, but the newbie seems to be one of them.
Oh
So
my
that's pretty
goodness. Oh my goodness. It's been amazing. I don't know whether you've had any treatment through Adam or
No,
not.
I haven't had any trick. I haven't had much. I'm fascinated by the age concept of
Yeah.
50, but 7. So
Yep.
what are you doing right that the rest of us aren't doing?
cool. Well, I'm trying to sleep. You know, I'm getting hopefully 7-8 hours of sleep a night. I'm trying to eat well. I exercise. I mean, I think those are probably the 3 most important kind of aspects of your health. Is you gotta, the sleep is probably the most important, and so many of us are sleep deprived. But your sleep is actually more important than the exercise and stuff that you're doing, because
Sleep is more important than exercise.
absolutely, because you can do all this exercise, but if you don't recover from the strain on your body, then you're not recovering and you're kind of breaking it down. But then you can have like a cumulative effect, and that's how like, you know, athletes get in trouble because they're overtraining and then something catches up with them.
Right.
But that can happen to just our everyday person. You know, if you're not getting sleep consistently, you're not healing just from your activities of the day, and then next day you're running at a deficit. You know, I think we talked about, again, I'm kind of a tech geek. I wear this thing on my arm that measures all that stuff, and so every morning I get a
That is not an
recovery-
iWatch for your arm.
No, this is it's called a Whoop band, and it monitors all of my vital statistics, and so it monitors how much I sleep. It monitors how much strain I've put on the day based
Well,
on
where do you see that information?
my
Do you put
phone.
it on-
It's on my phone. It links to my phone. And so it gives me a readout every day of what my recovery is, but it does that same thing as my run in the clinic. It just gives it to me every day. So it says the same thing. It says I'm 37 years old, even though
I
I'm
wonder
50.
how old I am.
Yeah, well, we could run one.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And can people, if they're not progressing well, can you catch up? Can you, you know, if you're not in great
Recover
health,
it?
can you recover
Absolutely.
and go backwards a little bit?
Absolutely. And a perfect example of is I'm trying to think how old I was, but you know, a few years ago when we were in the COVID crisis, and I ended up getting COVID, you know, I was, I think, 46 at that time, and my adjusted age at that point was like 30. And when I got COVID and I ran that HRV test on myself, my age adjusted range was 46. It was the same age.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden, but I have patients sometimes where, like, I mean, I have who that I work with that has had a stroke, and I think they're 69, but their age adjusted rate is on the HRV is like 79. And as I've been working with them, we've gotten that to come back down and now lower than what their actual age is, as we've gotten things to heal and start to recover. So there's definitely, I mean, it's not like, oh, well, I've beat my body up and it's horrible.
Right. I mean, because some of us say we've beaten our body up pretty good and
Yeah.
haven't slept well, and
Yep.
we've during our major working years, there was not a lot of sleep. And
Right,
you
yeah.
raise the kids, you work your tail off,
Exactly.
and you're not getting a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Can I recover a little bit later on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So
Because I want to know if there's.
there's never too late. And that's where, you know, it's so important now, you know, when you're dealing with different issues or whatever, to get back on track, and we can help stimulate those different systems to get them back on track. And that's what we do with the newbie, which is another piece of equipment we talk about. So like with what we would do with you, where like when you had the peripheral neuropathy, we would do the master reset, where we put 2 pads on your neck and 2 pads on your feet, and that stimulates the vagus nerve, which controls that balance. And so we can actually stimulate that parasympathetic activity so that we get you into a recovery state. You start sleeping better, you start recovering better.
Well, why is it that it hurts more at night than it does during the day? Is it because I'm moving around and more active when I'm awake?
Not necessarily. I mean, that could be part of it. It could be that, you know, you're trying to heal when you sleep, and so you're at night, and so your body's then, you know, you've You're not eating food, because when you eat food, your body has to spend energy to digest that food. So hopefully when you're sleeping, that's when your body is recovering all of that tissue, or all those tissue, all the, different deficits that your body needs to fix. There's kind of two different parts of sleep, and then going back to my Whoop band, mine gives me a readout of what it is. But the first half of your sleep cycle is what's called slow wave sleep or deep sleep, and that's where your body secretes human growth hormone to help heal tissues and that type of stuff. And the second half of the sleep, which a lot of people have heard, is the REM sleep, or the rapid eye movement sleep, and that's where your brain is like cataloging all your memories from the previous day and kind of clearing all that stuff up, so that when you wake up, hopefully you're waking up refreshed and kind of ready to meet the challenge of the day. But like with my Whoop band, I can see, that, I got 2.5 hours of deep sleep, and I got 2.5 hours of REM sleep, and then the rest of it was light sleep, or I was maybe awake a little bit, and it'll tell me all that stuff.
And that's so important for you to find out if people
sure.
are on the healing process.
Yeah.
And it's also the classic person who wakes up at 3 or 3 in the middle of the night.
Absolutely.
And has to get back.
Exactly.
And then goes into your REM sleep. Am I right? Which is a lot lighter.
Right, exactly.
Because you're probably the rest of your day and world.
And that's the hard part too, is that our body doesn't really know how to adjust that. So say if your normal bedtime is, say, 9, and all of a sudden you went to bed at midnight, well, you just missed 3 hours of your first cycle of sleep, because your body's not going to adjust for that. So you'll get a little bit of deep sleep, but then it's like, oh, well, we got, normal, sunrise, sunset time. And so the brain says, oh, well, I got to get in that REM sleep. So you may try and get more of that REM sleep. As if you wake up early, your body doesn't necessarily know you're going to wake up early. So all of a sudden your REM sleep was cut short. And so you wake up and you've got kind of that fogginess, cloudiness, not really, you're tired. It's because your system didn't get that proper chance to recover.
That's interesting, because when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep, I get hold of my book. I'm reading a book, and I'll lie there and I'll have it up here.
Yeah.
And that makes me, slow down, and I have a hard time reading. And then I get sleepy and go back to sleep again.
Otherwise, it takes you a while. If you were to just get back in bed and try to go to sleep,
Yes,
it would take you a while.
because I've talked to myself many times, and if I go back to bed, I can't go back to sleep quickly. But if I read a book, and I've got my hands up here with the book and I'm reading it, that makes me sleepy.
Right. But that's not ideal, because you've disrupted those sleeps. Could be, not probably the whole thing, but could be a factor of why your peripheral neuropathy stuff came back. If you're not getting a good night's sleep and you're breaking that up, having, obviously, as we get older, you have to get up and go to the bathroom, stuff like that. But then you should just really, you try and minimize any lights you turn on, because that stimulates, your eye receptors that say, oh, wait a minute, is it morning time? So, because we're not used to that artificial light, so you want to try and keep things dim, obviously enough light that you're not going to trip on something and fall. But
Yeah, but I have to have a light on in order to read.
Well, that's messing with your sleep cycle.
But, with my hands up here and I'm reading, that makes me sleepy.
Yeah.
Or makes me want to think, put the book down, turn the light out.
Yep.
And then I go back to sleep.
Yep. But that's disrupted, so it's not going to be ideal. I mean, it's what you need to do. It's what you need to do.
I think you're getting a lesson here, Barbara. You're getting a lesson here.
Boy.
Put the book down, put the lights off. Let's go.
Yeah, but that doesn't help me when I can't go back to sleep.
Right. Well, I think you probably have to kind of retrain your system so that you literally, if you have to get up to go to the bathroom and get right back in bed, and then try and get right back into your sleep cycle. Because that disruption is going to definitely throw the system off.
Like I said, you learn something new every
There you
day,
go.
don't you?
Absolutely.
Oh my
What's
goodness.
I heard something about a projection clock. What's that?
I'm not sure if that, like, where they project it up like on a
Right,
wall or something
right.
like that. I've seen those. I haven't done anything with that. Like, I try to minimize any lights that are in our room, because you don't want to, have a lot of, artificial light, stuff
Right.
like that your system will take that into account. So like my alarm clock, I can actually turn the alarm clock. So when I go to sleep, I turn that off, and then, I usually come into light sleep, usually 5:30 or so, half an hour or so before I'm going to get up.
Yeah, well, Alexa does everything for me. I don't even look at the clock. Alexa tells me when I'm getting up.
Yep.
Hey, can you talk about, on your website, you talk about we focus on the person.
Yes.
And not just where it is of what's hurting.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I guess I kind of pride myself, and then also with my staff, we all kind of talk with patients, and we want to hear what's going on. So it's interesting. I was actually just talking to a patient about this morning, but she'd had a follow up with her primary doctor, and trying to tell them what was going on, and he was so focused on writing everything in the computer. He had his back to her and not really answering her questions, and not really talking about asking getting to the bottom of what she was going to see him.
Right.
And for us, when you come in to see us, we're trying to be the detective. We're trying to help you. You're coming to us with a problem. So I literally, when you come in and do an evaluation with me, my computer off to the side, I literally sit down and I open up arms and say, what can I help you with? And I want to hear the story. Even if that takes me 20 minutes of you telling me what's going on, I want to hear that story, because that's a lot of times how we get to the bottom of what's causing the underlying problem.
We're gonna continue on this conversation.
for sure.
It's a great one because it's 2025 and
Yeah.
it's on the computer, making sure you get every single note.
for
so
sure.
we'd love to share that. We need to take a break now. I'm Kevin MacDonald with my co-host Barbara Cochran on your home station 98.1 FM, AM 1220 KHTS.
Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host Kevin MacDonald on your hometown station 98.1 FM, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Adam Laraway from Focus Physical Therapy. And let's continue this
Absolutely.
very interesting conversation.
Yeah, so before the break, we were talking about how, we kind of like to, I guess, bring the human element back in, and really taking the time with the patient in our evaluation. A lot of clinics, unfortunately, they do 30-minute evaluations, and we do a whole hour. And that hour is set aside for you on your first visit with us. And we literally, you come in, you tell us what's going on, what you've been dealing with. And that really, like I said, we're kind of a detective. The better the information that you're giving us, the better we can kind of hone in on what we need to test to get to the bottom of the problem.
Yes.
As physical therapists, we learn all these, what they call objective tests, with checking your range of motion and checking your strength. And then we have what's called special tests, where we, if it's a shoulder, there's, probably 50 different tests that we do to try and test different structures. And see if we can kind of provoke it a little bit to see if that's what is causing the issue. And that helps us kind of down, and a good physical therapist will use those tests and those measures so that we really kind of know what exercises to give you to correct the problem. And that's where, most of the time with physical therapy, that's great. We give you the right exercise and the problem goes away. But for those ones that don't, we're having this heart rate variability or the newbie to scan. Those other technologies gives us a little, I guess, leg up on some of the competition, is that we can try and hone in when some of that stuff's not responding like it should respond.
So it really is being like a detective, trying to
Absolutely.
find out. So you're asking me questions because you would pound me with questions,
Right.
even about what I do for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. To try to narrow this down, because I could be doing something you're not
For
even
sure.
aware of.
For sure. And I mean, you think about it, most, patients, when you're coming in to see a physical therapist, you're seeing us 2 to 3 times a week. So you're seeing us for 2 to 3 hours a week. Well, that extra 165 hours in the week, if you're doing the same thing that was causing the problem to begin with, and we don't correct that behavior, we're going to beat our head against the wall, because we might give you the right exercise, but if you're still doing the behavior that aggravated the system to begin with, then we're going to kind of one step forward, one step back. And that's where being a detective, is really, really important. I was just actually right before a woman who, was having some knee pain, and so we were talking about like how to get up properly from a chair, and with what's called a hip hinge, and making sure her feet were in the right spot so it wasn't putting any extra torque on her knee. And like once she was able to make some of those adjustments, all of a sudden the knee pain was gone. And she's like, oh my gosh, like this is wonderful. Like how did we get the pain to go away? I'm still going from standing to sitting and sitting to standing. And I said, and that's important, because think about how many times you get up from the toilet during the day, get up from the kitchen table. Like if you're getting up, 30, 40, 50 times a day and you're doing it wrong, that's why at the end of the night, your knees or your back or whatever body part's bothering you, they finally said, I've had it. I can't do it anymore. And that's when the inflammation comes on.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, what do you do repetitively all day long that you're like, that could cause it? And if you don't change that
sure.
behavior or that adjustment, and I would guess as you go into your different decades of life, that's going to change. I'm doing stuff now that I don't think I'll be doing in 15 years,
Yeah.
but how do I course correct?
Absolutely. And that's where, I think, getting in to see the physical therapist and having those assessments, will definitely help with, getting you to do those activities for much longer and longer and longer. 'Cause,
Right.
we're all living longer lives, but we want to have a good quality life so that you're able to do what you want to do.
But my constant question is, do I need a referral from my primary physician, or how do I do this?
So I hate to answer this, but it depends.
Right, of course.
For certain insurances, you do. So Medicare generally, because they have to have what's called a plan of care signed by their physician. So they generally, Medicare, you need to have a referral from your physician. But we do have what's called direct access. And so you can do 12 visits or 45 days without seeing a physician. If we go beyond that, then you've got to see a physician to get screened.
Okay. But I'm in the Medicare world yet. I'm right before it.
What you could do is call in to the office. The girls at our front desk would take your insurance information, and they would verify the benefits to know whether or not you need a prescription or whether you don't. Majority of them don't need it anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
Okay. My goodness. So if I came in again, would I have to do all this stuff, get a referral from a doctor?
Yeah. So for you, because with Medicare, you would have to have a referral from, and it can be your doctors, can be your primary care doctor, if you have a specialist, anybody who wants to write the prescription with the diagnoses on it.
Oh, okay.
So we know what we're looking at, but then once we do that, and then we send them a report after your evaluation with our findings and what they call a pair. And the doctor sees that, signs it, and sends it back, and then that gives us 90 days or 10 visits of treatment.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We got to wrap up today. We got great information and a great show. Hey, you've been listening to the Senior Hour on your hometown station, 98 FM, AM 1220 KHTS.